Welcome back to Life Lanes, the Brotherly Guide. We're your hosts, Justin and Dom Mazza. And on today's episode, we're continuing our one-on-one series about buying a home. Last time we spoke, we talked about kind of the front-end work, emotional journey, financial reasons to buy a home or to not buy a home. And today we're going to be talking about finding a real estate agent, looking for homes, maybe the process of mortgages, making an offer, stuff like that. Dom, how are you? Good to see you.
Well, good to see you too, Justin. It's a beautiful Sunday morning here in sunny Vermont. We've had a nice stretch of weather.
Us too. Keep praying
It's
for 2 more weeks of
great.
it, please.
Yeah, I'm praying to the gods. Don't worry.
Yeah. I was a little late this morning because my neighbors stopped me to ask me to run for a board member seat on my condo.
Don't
And I
do
was,
it.
that's what I was like. It sounds like a lot of responsibility with no financial reward,
It's a
which is a challenge.
thankless job. My friend, he moved here not too like after me, and he's the HOA president of his little community, and he's like, it's awful. People are so mean to you. Nobody's happy. Everyone's
Yeah.
always just pissed off at you for some reason.
That's what it feels like. We just got a reassessment of our HOA dues and it went up significantly. And people were like, what the hell? What do these even people do? And I mean, even me, I took a look at the service contracts that we have for like landscaping and elevators and all that. And I think they're ludicrous of how much we're paying people to cut grass. And, because of that, I'll be honest, the older people, people in my building are like, oh, we'd love for you to run for board, blah blah blah. Because the last guy was pretty young; he was an engineer, but he moved out. I think the other side of it's like Lindsay and I are probably going to be looking to move out over the next 18 months or so. Like, do I really want to push for this? And the answer is probably not.
Yeah, it's honestly funny how people find themselves in situations like that. I have another friend who started his job, I think, in October as a physician, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we have union negotiations." I was like, "Are you taking part in those?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm the union president." I was like, "You just got there though." But but he said that they negotiated a 20% raise.
That's crazy.
It's pretty
Is it
fucking
20% year over
substantial.
year or 20% over the next 5?
I didn't get that far. I
Yeah,
think it's just
It could be. That's how the dad's union is. Nurses union, they pick 8% and then they work up to it for the next 3 to 5 years. So if you hear like a 10% raise, it's like, okay, well, 3+%
yeah.
a year.
Regardless,
Yeah,
it's still pretty substantial.
we like money. Yeah, well, it's
Yeah.
guaranteed that's coming in. So
Yep.
um,
Yep.
cool.
All right. So we're here for part 2 of the housing, right? So, just a little recap. We did our background homework about what we can afford, right? Maybe we looked at Zillow for a couple properties that we like. Now we're transitioning to that next step. We're like, all right, I'm going to get serious. Where do I even begin, Justin? Do I just walk into a bank saying I want to buy a home? Do
Yeah,
I call my friend who has a real estate agent and be like, hey, I want to buy a home? Where do I go?
I think there is actually no first step, but there's 3 parties that I think need to be involved in this, and either one of them can lead you in the right path. So one of them is just a real estate agent. You probably know a real estate agent just through friends or family or whatever. There are a lot of agents out there. I think a lot of folks got their real estate license during the early parts of COVID because the market was hot. Everyone was buying. Slow down a little bit. I have a couple realtor friends who are looking to leave the industry, but a real estate agent is someone who, first of all, is free to you as the buyer. You can engage with them. You can tell them how serious you are. They could back off. They could not. Friends of ours, for example, told a realtor, hey, we're not ready to buy until next year. For some reason, the realtor still took them on as a client, which was crazy to me, but they still would, right? Because it's at no cost. That realtor or real estate agent would be able to provide you with, hey, these are the steps. They probably have like an intro booklet, something like that. The other side of this is just go to your bank, go to your primary checking facility. For me, it's Bank of America. For others, Chase or maybe some small regional banks. Ask them, hey, I'm potentially looking to buy a home. What are the steps? They're going to say pre-approval, and we'll get to what that means in a second. But that's, again, they have your best interests. They're technically free for you, which is great. And the third party, which isn't free, but you'll need them eventually, is a real estate attorney. Usually, a real estate agent probably has someone that they work with. I found mine through a family friend who I just reached out, who's in law, and I said, hey, I'm looking for one. And immediately, it was super easy to find one. So those are kind of the 3 parties.
Let me interject real quick.
Please do.
So, would the real estate agent have contacts with real estate attorneys? I'm assuming.
I'm assuming yes.
Yeah.
I worked with a real estate agent in Queens who, the other thing is, I think it's important. A real estate agent doesn't mean it's your full time job. Like the guy I worked with in Queens definitely was his part time job. He had weird hours that we can only meet him. He was only available for like 3 days a week. So he honestly wasn't as invested as I was, right, in the home buying process, which is
Mhm.
something to note. Meanwhile, then when I worked with the real estate agent on Long Island, that was their full time job. So there's different qualities, obviously, of agent too. And I think and this is not to put anyone down, I think it's relatively easy to get your real estate license. I
Mhm.
don't know the difference between a realtor and a real estate agent. There's a
Oh,
whole modern
I think I know the difference.
the Modern Family really
Yeah.
does a whole episode on it.
Real estate. So all
Real
real
estate agents are realtors.
realtors.
Yeah.
No. All
Oh,
realtors are real estate agents. So realtors are part of this big conglomeration.
yeah. Let's
Let's
see.
see.
A realtor's person who acts for the purchase, but they can't protect. Oh, yeah, they're part of the National Association of Realtors.
Yes. Yes.
Gotcha. So
Exactly.
it's a step up, we would say, or they
Yeah,
pay
it's like
dues at
another
least.
like certification. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
basically like, in my field, if you were to say like a physician versus like a health practitioner, right? Health
Mm.
practitioner is much more general. It's kind of like loosey goosey with that terminology.
I think when it comes to just going on finding a real estate agent, I mean, I think word of mouth is better than Google. Just talking to people who have bought
Yeah, I mean,
before.
how hard is it? Like you don't know one person who's
Right.
bought a home in the last year or two. Just go through them, see. I know I have a real estate agent on my soccer team, so that's a good place to start. But
So a couple like best practices work from real estate agent. So if you are working with real estate agent Dom, you should not be working with another real estate agent at that same time. It's a one-on-one relationship. So you can't go and find 5 different real estate agents. I don't know if this is a moral or ethics code kind of piece or if it's actually the law. I have no clue. I don't think it's the law unless they make you sign a contract.
doesn't
I
sound
have
like the
seen
law.
contracts though to say you are going to be working with me for the next calendar year and you are not allowed to buy from anyone else, which is pretty crazy that you would lock yourself into that. But I think that's something to talk about. The other thing is asking them again, is this their full-time job or not? But also like let them show you comps of recent homes that they've sold. So you get an idea because you could say, I'm in the market for a house for 500,000. They say, sure. And then all of a sudden you look at their comps of their 10 most recent homes and they're all over a million. No offense, you shouldn't be working with that person. They're going to try to upsell you. They're going to try to put you in a different bracket, probably that you can't afford. And you should find someone who is in the relative range of homes that are in your budget.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at it like the same thing of finding a barber. Do a couple interviews, find what works best for you, give it a couple trial runs. It's okay to move on from one. I felt like very guilty breaking up with my first real estate agent because I was working with him for over a year in Forest Hills. And I was just like, Lindsay, how do I do this? She's like, don't overthink it. Like literally it's nothing. I was like, oh, I feel bad. I've wasted, 30 hours of his life. And he's like, no, that's the job. I mean, that's just
Yeah,
what it comes down to sometimes.
that'd
So
be a good modern Seinfeld episode, like
breaking up with
breaking
your
up with
agent.
your real estate agent. Yeah,
Yeah, it was tough. It was tough. Well, there's the whole barber one. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I experienced that with my barber. My Dominicans up here. Like, I sampled 3 of them until I arrived at Cheeky, and it was kind of awkward at first. Walking
Yeah.
in and like they look like that you're gonna sit in their chair, and then you sit in someone else's chair. They're like, oh shit.
I went through the owner of the barber over here. I was getting my haircut from him for the last 2 years or so, and then his buddy who was younger had an opening. I was like, you mind if I get a haircut with you? And now he's my guy. And I do see, it's kind of funny. The owner looks at me. He's like, good to see you. I'm like, yeah, good to see you too, man. I'm going to go in this chair now. He gets my tips. Yeah.
The worst is when you're like, oh, I'm gonna wait for whoever, like before
Oh,
appointments for a
that
thing
hurts.
for
When the guy's
barbers.
empty. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. The guy's empty. There's like maybe even a person in front of you on the good
I'm
guy.
going to
You're
wait
like,
for
no,
Manny.
I'm just gonna wait.
Oh, that's
Like,
tough.
whoa,
That's
damn.
pretty tough.
That would force me to really reevaluate my hair cutting
Your
skills.
skills and your career path. Yeah. Going back to the agent stuff, I mean, it's funny because I think a lot of people want to give that business to their friends. Like you even said, your friend in your soccer team, which is totally fair. For me, I used Jerry's real estate agent and I made her job way too easy. Like I sent her all the listings I wanted to see. It was a relatively quick sale process. Now, this was a different time 4 years ago. However, I think next time I'm not showing allegiance to friends. Like I have a couple of friends who are real estate agents. I don't think I'm going to use them. I'm going to use this woman actually from my CrossFit gym who is a freaking beast. And she was like educating me the other day, just talking to me about different markets, what she thinks the Fed's going to do. Like she was thinking about it the way I think about it. And I was like, great, like you're going to get the first crack on it because I feel and she's seasoned, right? I mean, she's like in her late 40s probably or something like that. So that's
yeah. Yeah, I'm not saying I was going to use the girl on my team, but one of my friends just bought a condo and he was like, "Oh yeah, highly recommend, my real estate agent. It was great." Going to the second point that you made about going through the bank, do you think it'd be problematic if your bank is not necessarily located in your state?
No, I think so. What you want to go for your bank or a bank is to get pre-approval. So pre-approval is before anything happens, whoever wants to give you a loan, right? And this is typically a bank, it could be like a different loan organization. I always suggest a bank. They outline really what you can afford is kind of what it comes down to. So they do a credit check. They want you to bring in bank statements. They want you to show proof of employment. You submit an application. It's honestly relatively simple. And then they give you that mortgage percentage or your interest percent that you would qualify for. So sometimes, it'd be a couple percent off, maybe of someone else in a very similar situation.
Not like a couple, like hundredths of a point, not a
Yes,
point.
correct. Sorry, point blank. Yes, yeah. You're right. I use my primary bank mostly because I know anyone else to use. Like I could have done it with, let's say, Chase and just had my mortgage through Chase, but my primary checking through Bank of America, totally fine. A lot of people are looking at small regional banks and smaller banks that you and I probably haven't heard of because they will probably offer a little bit of better interest rate. Challenge there is we went through a semi-financial crisis over the last few years, but some of these banks went under, not because of housing, but for other reasons. And I just strongly suggest, personally, just going with a trusted institution that you feel comfortable with. But meeting, like I know people who have used, I guess I don't know a better word for loan organizations, but non-bank institutions who can just give out a loan, because that's all you really need for a house. You just need a loan, and then you're gonna be paying back that loan to whoever gave it to you. Typically, that's a bank, could be other institutions. Cool. Moving on from pre-approval.
Yeah, sorry, I had some computer issues real quick. What about credit unions? Do you even know what a credit union is?
I don't, because I've never had a reason to use it. Like I've heard the term. Here, I mean, if it just says it's a non-for-profit
banks,
financial institution. Okay.
Exactly. Banks are for profit.
Yeah, but that doesn't. So let's doesn't mean they don't have a for-profit arm. Like we have non-for-profit clients that have a for-profit company within their organization. So that's always like a non-for-profit. Like is very easy to call yourself that because it's just very easy. Like so, a credit union, I guess, is it like they could offer better interest rates on savings accounts?
I have an account with my business through Vermont Federal Credit Union.
Gotcha. When you say an account, you mean a savings account?
A checking account.
Checking account. Okay. Yeah, so maybe they offer a little bit better interest rate. I mean, go for it, right? Like if that is, I would definitely go to them and say, hey, if I wanted to get pre-approved, what's the process? Also go to Bank of America. I don't think through my mortgage, I never stepped foot into a bank. That's another thing. Like, we use online savings like Ally Bank, which is great. I'd probably look at them for my next mortgage. The reason I just did Bank of America is because my money was going in there. So I knew it would be easy for that money to go from my checking to my mortgage and just call it a day.
All right. So let's say, we found a real estate agent, through Ever, probably a referral system. We went to the bank and we received our pre-approval and we got locked in at whatever interest rate we're going to be locked in at. Where are we going next?
You got to go see some homes, actually in person.
Gotta go see some homes. That's a good point.
Yeah, the fun part. I think a lot of people, weirdly enough, bought through virtual experiences during COVID. That was like a big popular thing. They would waive contingencies. They would just say, these pictures seem legit. Let's just go with it, which is pretty crazy. That has changed for sure. I remember when I was viewing in COVID I'd have to put booties on, wear a mask, like in some places. But setting up a viewing, so there's, I guess, two ways of viewing a home. One would be a public open house, which is just open to the public. You and me can just drive around the neighborhood, find an open house, and stop on in. Some of those open houses do require appointments, so it's good to check that. The other one is getting a private appointment or a walkthrough with your real estate agent. Sometimes your agent will come and meet the other agent. Most of the time, in my experience, I was just said to go to XYZ address at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and a real estate agent will let you in. And that's exactly what happened. I just like met the seller's realtor or real estate agent and walked through the house. So I've been to literally one public open house in the Carolinas. I really wanted to buy the home, but wasn't allowed to. But all the others have just been one-on-one, like small appointments, which are kind of funny because obviously the seller's agent, and they're just telling you all the best parts, right? Like nothing is wrong with this home because they're trying to sell it. And then you're like walking around, you're whispering with your partner or your real estate agent, like, like that's wrong. This is wrong. I don't like this. And it's kind of awkward because you don't want to publicly admit that this isn't the home for you. But I think it's important, especially when you're with your real estate agent, either to do a recap or, whatever, step outside after and just talk about it. I think that's super important so they learn and you learn too what you like and what you don't.
Now, when you're doing this walkthrough with your partner or your real estate agent, what are you looking for?
It's a good question. So
you doing the water pressure? Be like, it's got good water pressure.
No, you'll do that during inspection if you don't waive that, which is a whole other ball game.
Which is after this walkthrough?
After all that. Yeah. So right now you're just literally a tourist in someone's house, right? I'm looking at just like, how does the space feel as in general? Like if I'm in the living room, can I see the kitchen or is it compartmentalized? Because on the pictures are one thing, or Zillow, they'll tell you, it's 4-bedroom, 1.5 bath, whatever. It's like, well, maybe that fourth bedroom was an attic and it was pictured differently. So understanding all that. For me, I also like seeing the neighborhood, just like when I'm driving there. Like, does it feel like a nice neighborhood? I'll look around the neighbors. Dad likes to say, look at the cars in the driveway, because if they're expensive cars, it's a nicer neighborhood because there's like extra money. I was like, that's not a bad like way of thinking. But honestly, you kind of have this emotional journey when you walk through the house for the first time to say like, oh, could this be my house? For a first time home buyer, that's super overwhelming and super crazy to think about like that. I live in a condo, right? 2 bed, 2 bath. When I viewed this, I also viewed another unit in the same building, 2 floors down. That was probably like 50 to 60 grand more expensive. But it was a little bit bigger. It had like soup to nuts, like high end, like air conditioning, or they had like the smart fridge and all these like random things. For me, I was like single at the time, or I was just dating Lindsay. So I wasn't thinking about buying it and growing a family there. So I just bought something that worked for me. But I also think it's important to think like, if you plan on living in a space for 5 to 10 years, how is your life going to change over time? That could be kids, partner, animals, whatever. Working from home, like that was something that changed. I think it's important to think about, where could my life be changing over 5 years, and how does this home support or not those life changes?
Okay, that's good. All right, so let's say we've toured a couple houses and we find one that we really like and we can see ourselves living there.
Crazy.
Do we just make an offer on the spot? A little spit shake, let's get this deal done, or how does that work?
Yeah, so you go to your realtor and you said, hey, I'd love to make an offer on this house. They quickly run comps or comparisons about similar homes in similar neighborhoods, what they've sold for, really finding what the market value is.
Which is going to be different than what was listed on Zillow?
Correct. Zillow would be, or wherever, it would be the price that home buyer is thinking they can get for the home. It's the same way of like, let's think of athletes. The market price of an athlete is how much money they're bringing into the organization and how popular they are, etc. But a owner might pay them 3 times as much because they want to keep them for the next 10 years and all this kind of stuff. So I think it's important to realize whatever price is listed there, let's say it's a $500,000 home, and you look at comparisons of similar bedrooms. And I think that's the other thing. When they run comps, they look at bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage. They don't look at like desirable community, so like there's things to when you run the comps. I think it's important to just look at what requirements, or I'm sorry, what constraints really are the comps being run under. But let's say it's a $500,000 home. You're like, you know what? I feel comfortable talking to my agent. I'm going to offer 450. We'll just make the math easy. Now in today's world, you don't offer below, you offer over, which is insane. And I don't know if that's ever been the case before, because the problem in the housing market right now, there's not a lot of supply. So people who are buying homes are probably pretty desperate. And if it's a $500,000 home, I've heard crazy stories where people offer 650, 700 because they really want that home. Doesn't mean it's the market value. Doesn't mean that's what it's worth. But to them, that's what they're willing to pay. Right. So that's another concept of that. But when you got your pre-approval, your bank or your credit union told you, hey, you're able to afford a $500,000 home. Here's your borrowing limit. You made that offer of, let's call it 450. There's some negotiations in between. That's all done through your real estate agents, not done by you and the owner. You're never talking to the owner of the house directly, typically. There's contingencies including that. So things are like inspection. Like, so you as a buyer have the right to hire an inspector to come to the home after you've made the offer and it's been accepted. That's a key piece there. So I've made the offer of 450. Maybe we settled at 475. So now
you can't do an inspection prior to offering?
Not a verbal written offer. It's not signed. You can always back out of an offer. It's kind of bad taste in a way, but you can back out of an offer. So I made an offer for 450. You countered it at 475. We both said that's good. It's now in writing. That offer has been accepted, they say. Then you go and hire an inspector. You also have to hire an appraiser, someone who comes out and says what the house is actually valued.
How is that different than like market what the realtor was doing?
The market is just, honestly, it's like finger in the sky. I'll be honest. An appraiser will come and actually walk through the space, and they'll work with your loan institution because maybe you got pre-approved for 500 and maybe the home was 475. Typically, you want the appraised value and your offer to come pretty similar because it just makes your loan much simpler. But they're just saying, hey, I think the house is worth 478, not 475. Like literally, it could be that kind of difference. Just affects your loan very slightly, not much at all. But you
How
can
much?
get.
I was just going to say, how much does an appraiser and an inspector usually cost?
You know what? I think my inspector, I want to say it was like $400. I don't.
It's not
I think.
horrible.
Yeah. How much is a home inspection? Let's see here. This was so you got like $800 for 4,000 square feet. It's pretty big. Yeah. So $550 is like average there. So
it's pretty wild to me that you
I
can't
agree.
do an inspection
Before-
prior to making the
The
offer.
reason is people will waive it. And that's like very common today because it's so competitive. They'll waive inspection, which is crazy. That's like that's more common than not. I was not ever willing to do that. I still won't
No
ever be
way.
willing to do that. But I think it's also important. The inspection isn't probably what we think it should be. Like they're checking if the outlets work. They're checking if water pressure is fine. But they're not checking what's inside the walls. They're not checking your plumbing, like if the toilet's going to clog in a year from now. You just have no
There's
clue.
mold.
Yeah, only if it's visible. They don't open anything up. They just look around.
It's
Honestly,
so scary.
I was pretty depressed leaving my inspection where I was noticing things and pointing them out, and he wasn't like putting them on his report. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, now they'll look at the roof if it's intact, but they're not going to say, oh, this roof needs to be replaced in 5 years. When things do come up on the inspection, then you can negotiate with the buyer directly of how much compensation you want for that, including the offer. So if the inspection says you're going to need a new roof right after you buy this home because it's in shambles, they'll put a price, let's call it, 20 grand on the roof that the buyer might actually include in your offer. I'm sorry, the seller would include in your offer to give you money back for the roof. Not very common in today's world, but that has happened in the past and will continue to happen. But then if you want to do all these other testing like termite inspection, mold testing, asbestos, foundation. Those are all extra costs that by the same guys. I do agree a home inspection is kind of scary. That's why personally, if you can not waive it, I wouldn't, obviously. So it's very important to me just to have that, especially for a first time home buyer.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't think it should be necessarily bad taste if you want to back out. Obviously it depends on what the situation is, but it's like if I do the inspection and it's a fucking piece of shit, home, obviously I'm not going to fork up, the biggest purchase of my life right now.
Yeah, I think some of when it comes down to all this, like, is understanding, is it an investment vehicle to you, or is it a place, an emotional, like, and there's some balance between the two. We talked about this last time, but I know people who have been looking for homes for 2 to 3 years, and they're just like, fuck it, I'm just waiving the inspection. Like, I'm done with this process. It's been frustrating, it's been depressing. And I can understand that. Like, at some point, we're planning a wedding now, and we got on the phone with the DJ, and DJ's like, "Oh, did you want ceremony music?" We're like, "Duh, yeah, of course." And he goes, "Oh, it's an extra $500. It wasn't in your contract." I'd be like, "Are you kidding me?" But now I'm just like, "Oh, whatever, just include it." I'm like so done with it,
Yeah.
just because it's been such a journey. Uh, it is crazy to think like you're buying these four walls. I do think, hey, if it's a $400,000 home versus an 800, maybe you're more willing because it's a lower cost and overall risk. But it's something to talk about. Did we talk about like how much money to put down last time around?
As far as like a down payment
Yeah,
and
and all that.
PMI.
Oh yeah, we
Yeah,
did
we
talk about
yeah,
PMI.
we talked about PMI.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I think it's important just to bring it up because when you're buying homes, you can buy a single family home, right? Which is your typical home, white picket fence, backyard kind of, thing where you're basically responsible for everything inside and out, right? And then you can buy a condo. So a condo is what I own, and it's the same ownership structure as a home. We do have an HOA, homeowners association, that sets rules to the community. There's not many rules, but we do. But we have like a landscaper that does all the, I don't have to organize my grass getting cut, which is really nice. So if anything happens outside of my walls, the HOA is responsible for it. The roof, the whatever, like siding comes off, but anything inside, I'm responsible. And then a co-op is you're actually buying shares in the building. So you think of it more like a stock. You're actually buying shares in it where the more square footage you have, the more shares. So each square foot is a share. That's a little bit more challenging because the governance could be probably a lot more strict. They have a lot more rights. They can approve or disapprove or reject, rather, approve or reject new home buyers. And reselling can be a little bit more complex as well because then you, as the seller, if you get an offer that's really good
But
and
they
for
don't
whatever
approve
reason
of it. Yeah.
they reject, you're like, well, I'm screwed then, right? So co-ops have the less flexibility. The least,
What about a townhome?
I think a townhome is, and this is where maybe you know more than I do because you've been looking at some, but I think a townhome can be either a co-op or a condo. It's just the style of home.
So a condo owner only has possession over the inside of the unit, while a townhouse owner controls the interior, exterior, and the land structure it sits on.
So it's very similar to single family home. It's just probably an
Yeah.
attached home. There you go.
Just two people owning it.
Right. So, I think a co-op typically are the most affordable because they have the least amount of flexibility and leverage. A lot of my friends have bought that for their first property, especially single people, which, you can. The problem right now is the housing is off the chains and everything's very expensive. So a lot of people have bought co-ops. I own a condo. I'm pretty happy with it. With that being said, I was even, asked to run for the board, which is a whole concept just because they're raising our HOA fees with very minimal explanation. And like, this is a common thing and it's getting a little frustrating for residents. Now, I liked buying a condo because I wanted to turn this into my first real estate rental property. And I thought it'd be much easier to rent out a 2 bath, 2 bed condo rather than maybe a larger single family home. So that was one of my aspirations when I was looking for a home. I was never looking at a single family. Retrospectively, probably should have, right? Like, because I never knew the housing market would get so crazy. And now Lindsay and I are going to start looking for a single family home to kind of start the next chapter of our lives and get some more space. But now we get the opportunity to turn this into a real estate property with a very low interest rate. So hopefully making a couple bucks every month. That probably would be a whole nother episode if we were going to go down rental property and get someone who knows a lot more about it than I do.
Do you know if there are parts of a contract when you buy a home that you can't rent it out?
So
Are there like condos and townhomes where
co-ops,
it's not
very, very often
co-ops?
co-ops. Yeah, they won't allow that. They don't, because they don't want to turn into like a hotel type situation. They want a lot of
That's kind of
control.
nice.
It is for if you live there, but if you are the one who has it, it's maybe the market's not where it should be. And you're like, well, I'd rather rent this place than sell it. You kind of can't sometimes. Now, sometimes you can, like, there's different
Yeah, but
processes.
I feel like those people just ruin it for everyone. No, because like you just bought this home, right? And now your next door neighbor is just renting it out, and you get all these people coming in and out, and there's no stability.
Yeah, I think in my building, for example, on the floor, we have 8 units. 4 of them are rented out. Now, I know well, actually, I know very well one particular, the couple right across the hall from us. They're super nice. They've been renting for 5 years. They're lovely people. Like, we've never any issues with them. Their little kids are great. They had a dog for a while. All good things. And then to your point,
The
then there's other
bulldog,
people. The bulldog, yeah.
did it die?
Yeah.
Oh,
A while ago, a couple months ago at
oh,
least. Yeah.
was it old?
Um, Yeah, I guess. I don't think she was that old. I think she was like 8 or 9-ish, maybe. Yeah, Riley was a sweetheart. We dog sat her a lot. Yes, R.I.P. But it's all about, like, again, flexibility, how much you're willing to pay as a couple, right? Or kind of following the traditional journey of get married, buy a home, have, like the kind of steps that everyone thinks about, or is portrayed about. We want a bigger home just because we want more space, like, just full stop. We live in 1,100 square feet. So we're looking for something for over 2,000 square feet for our next home, because we know we're going to grow into it and start having children and going to need that space. Yeah.
Okay. So let's say we made an offer, right? And it got approved. Okay. Now we did our inspection, we did the appraisal, and where's the next step? Like,
Yeah.
what is escrow? What
Oh,
the hell does that even mean?
we got to hold all that stuff for another. That's going to be the final step in the final episode in our series, because that is so overwhelming. The building all that money up, and the day of was the most stressful time of my life. And I don't know how many freaking checks I wrote that day and to who got paid for it, like the deed transfer tax and all this crap. But basically, once you finally have the home, the verbal offer has been accepted on both sides. You're going to finalize your offer letter, and that's when your real estate attorney is finally going to come in, and he's going to draft it up as a legal binding document. It's going to trade back and forth through your legal teams. Mine almost actually fell through because my attorney put down basically like 15 or 20 contingencies. One of them, let's say, has the seller confirms that they haven't filed a noise complaint in the last 24 months about their neighbors, and hasn't filed a smell complaint. It was all these things that my attorney was putting down to protect me in a condo, which was awesome. And then the seller's attorney was crossing things out. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, he goes, it's totally common. Like, just be patient. It was like weeks on end where them trading legal documents back and forth. Meanwhile, we have a verbal offer. And my thing was, can you take it off the market on Zillow? This way, no one can come in and make an offer over me, which they agreed to. So finally, we got the offer accepted, both legal documents. And once you sign that document saying, yes, I'm buying this home, then you're locked in. Then it's time to start gaining all that money. We'll talk about escrow. We'll talk about all the checks that you have to write the day of and all that stuff leading up to it. But it really is like, that's where I think it transitions from your real estate agent to your real estate attorney. And that's when you should be relying on that individual to guide you through the legal and the financial steps of the next step.
So basically, your realtor is kind of their job is done. If
Yeah,
they got you to buy the home, yeah, now we're transitioning the
they're just
responsibility to
waiting on their commission
the
check. Yep,
lawyer.
as soon as that thing's paid. I think something that my real estate agent did, I think most will do, well, once everything's accepted, they'll probably send you a gift package, like something really nice as a thank you. My real estate agent gave me like a nice bottle of Angel's Envy bourbon and like put together a really nice little package. Probably cost her like 300 to 400 bucks, I'll be honest, which was super nice. Now, granted, I made her job so easy. I saw a house on a Monday, first house I ever saw with her, and made an offer on a Tuesday, and it was accepted. That does not happen. That is a very rare instance. I think that's why she probably spent up. Other times, maybe you'll get a gift card or like a thank you
Hmm.
note or something like
Hmm.
that. But hey, that was very nice. And guess what? Now I have standards. If you're my real estate agent next time, you're gonna get me a gift basket.
All right. Well, I think that's a good place to stop for part two. In part one, we went over the pre approval thing of looking for a home, kind of let's seeing what we can actually afford. Now, in part two, we found our dream home. We made an offer and we got accepted. Yay. Part three,
Yay.
we're going to cover what happens after that as far as escrow and making sure that everything is lining up. I also do want to dive into the aspect of refinancing and how that process goes, so we can chat. That'll kind of be like the post game credits.
I enjoy this. This is good.
Cool. Great. So, yeah, I think that's a great place to stop.
Cool.